I took my daughter to chemo. Then the doctor said she never had cancer. I carried my daughter into the oncology wing like I always did. Left arm under her knees, right arm around her back, trying to pretend she wasn't lighter every week. She'd fallen asleep in the car, cheek on my shoulder, a faint fuzz of regrowing hair catching the fluorescent light. I balanced her in the dinosaur backpack and the cooler with her special smoothies Adeline packed, and I smiled at the receptionist because you learn to smile here. It makes the needles less scary. Next round for Daisy Carter, I said. New faces behind the desk. A doctor I hadn't seen before, short, steady eyes, navy scrubs. She glanced at our chart, then at Daisy, then at me like she was reading a second chart I couldn't see. Mr. Carter? I'm Dr. Mehta. Can we talk privately a moment? Sure, I said, but she needs her pre-meds in the next 20. That's what I want to discuss. She took us into a small consult room with a tissue box that had already been overused. Daisy blinked awake and reached for my hand. I rubbed circles into her palm, the way Adeline taught me. Dr. Mehta sat, folded her hands. I reviewed your daughter's file last night. Okay. And I reviewed her scans. All of them. I nodded, waiting for the dance we'd come to know. Counts low, counts high, dose adjusted, see you Tuesday. Mr. Carter, she said softly, there's no evidence your daughter has cancer. Not now. Not ever. Something in my ears popped, like the pressure change on a plane. I think you have the wrong chart. I've triple-checked. The imaging reports don't show malignancy. No tumor, no marrow involvement. Even the first ER notes, no definitive markers. In these labs, she turned the screen so I could see a line of numbers that meant nothing and everything. They're inconsistent with leukemia or lymphoma. They're consistent with something else. Daisy squeezed my finger. Daddy? Is it pokes time? Not yet. Bug, I whispered. Eyes still on the screen. Doc, she's lost her hair. She's exhausted. She bruises if I look at her too hard. Dr. Mehta nodded. Those can be side effects of chemotherapy. She let that hang there, careful. But the chemo was started without pathology confirmation. I'm trying to understand how that decision was made. My brain refused the sentence like a bad transplant. Dr. Collins started it. He said we couldn't wait. Aggressive, atypical presentation, he said. I could hear his voice, the decisive cadence I clung to like a life raft. Dr. Mehta clicked into a note. I see his addendum, but there's no biopsy report, no flow cytometry. I've requested the originals from outside facilities. Her voice softened. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm saying we need to stop treatment until we know what we're treating. Stop treatment. The words were a window flung open in winter. So what? What has been happening to her? We'll rerun labs. We'll scan again. And I'm ordering a tox screen. She washed my face. Sometimes, other medical conditions can mimic. Like what? Like exposure. To substances. She chose each word like it might explode. I laughed. It came out wrong, tinny and cracked. Exposure? We live on Cheerios and PBS. Document. She's 4. A nurse poked her head in. Sorry, you wanted to see this. She handed Dr. Mehta a folder-stamped stat. Dr. Mehta skimmed, then pressed her lips together. Mr. Carter, she said, has anyone in your home had symptoms? Nausea, hair loss, neuropathy? I thought of Adeline's migraines, the nights she said the smell of bleach in the clinic made her sick, the way she'd flinch when I suggested we switch brands of vitamins. My wife gets headaches, I said slowly. But she used to be a pediatric nurse. She knows this stuff. Dr. Mehta nodded like the clue fit somewhere I couldn't see. I'd like to admit Daisy for observation. No outside food or meds for 48 hours. Just to be safe. I looked at the cooler by my feet. Adeline's smoothies labeled with dates, glittery stickers Daisy loved. I felt ridiculous for guarding them like a talisman. Is that necessary? I think it's important. Daisy yawned. Can I have my cereal? Soon. Bug, I said, throat tight. In the hallway, the world carried on like it hadn't just tilted. A volunteer in a clown wig made balloon dogs. A TV played a cartoon where nothing bad ever stuck. I stood there with my child in my arms and felt my life pull apart like taffy. My phone buzzed. A notification from Adeline's newest post, round 6, and our warrior keeps smiling. Hashtag Team Daisy, hashtag Cancer Mama. The comments were the usual, prayer hands, hearts, strangers calling my wife an angel. Except one new comment sat under them like a dropped nail. Stop this. She's not sick. Check the labs. Daniel. I clicked his profile. No photo. A header image of a boy's socked feet on a hospital bed. Dr. Mehta's words echoed. Exposure. No evidence. Stop treatment. I typed before I could talk myself out of it. Who are you? His reply came fast. I'm the dad who buried his son. The floor went again. I grabbed the door frame to keep from sitting on the linoleum. Daisy watched my face, and for the first time since this started, I didn't know how to make it look okay. Daddy, she whispered. Are we going home? I looked at Dr. Mehta, at the cooler, at the comment that wasn't going to unsay itself. I don't know, Bug, I said. But we're going to find out what's true. I sat in the hospital recliner beside Daisy's bed while machines blinked steady green and blue. Her forehead dripped quietly, rhythmic as breathing. Every now and then she'd stir, mumbling for her mom, and I'd stroke her hand until she went still again. Adeline didn't answer my calls. She'd texted earlier. Everything okay? Tell Dr. Collins I'll bring Daisy's meds tomorrow. I typed back, don't. They're keeping her under hospital protocol. But I didn't hit send. Something in me was afraid of what her reply might be. Instead, I opened Facebook and scrolled back to the comment. The stranger, Daniel Wright, had messaged me. Daniel, I know what she's doing. I tried to warn you months ago. Me, who is this? Daniel, check the ingredients in the smoothies. And the vitamins. She's been adding something. Me, my wife would never hurt Daisy. Daniel, that's what I thought too. Until my boy died. My stomach turned cold. I clicked on his profile. Post after post about his son, Eli Wright, 6 years old, fighting leukemia. The photos looked eerily familiar. The same shaved head. The same wristbands. The same kind of captions Adeline used. Stay strong, warrior. One more round. Then the tone changed abruptly, months later. Headlines shared, police updates, a GoFundMe shut down. And finally a photo of a grave. I scrolled until I found one image that made my hands shake. Eli holding a get well card, and in the background, blurred but unmistakable, was Adeline. Same nurse's badge. Same gentle smile. I called him. He picked up after 2 rings. His voice was hoarse, like someone who'd been talking to ghosts. Is Daisy alive? Yes, I said, though my throat barely worked. What is this? What do you mean she? She worked at St. Luke's. My son's nurse. His breathing hitched. She said he reminded her of her little girl. She came by our room every day, brought special drinks, said they'd help with nausea. I swallowed. Smoothies? Yeah. A pause. Turns out they were laced with methate and arsenic, just enough to mimic chemo side effects. His counts tanked, he wasted away. We thought it was the cancer. But when the autopsy came back, his voice cracked. He never had cancer either. The room tilted. That's impossible. We saw the scans. I saw them too, he said bitterly. She knew how to fake them. She had access. You need to get everything in your house tested. The line went dead. I just sat there, staring at Daisy. Her skin was pale under the hospital light. A faint bruise circled her foresight, purple and sickly. I remembered the way Adeline always said, I'll prep her breakfast, you go start the car. The way she insisted she handle the meds, because I don't want you mixing the dosages wrong. By morning, I convinced myself Daniel was unhinged. Grief does terrible things to people, right? But when Dr. Mehta came in with the new labs, her face said otherwise. There are traces of methate and arsenic in her blood, she said softly. Low, but consistent. Enough to cause the symptoms you described. Hair loss, fatigue, anemia. My mind fractured in real time. You're saying someone poisoned her? She hesitated, then nodded. I've already called the toxicology team and notified child protection. We're expanding testing to everything she's ingested recently. Food, meds, supplements. I felt my knees go out. I had to grab the side of Daisy's bed to stay upright. When Adeline finally walked in around noon, bright smile, tote bag over her shoulder, a smoothie bottle poking out the top. I swear I could smell the poison. She kissed Daisy's forehead, brushed my cheek, and said, Hey, love, did the labs go okay? I just stared at her, at that same easy grace that used to make me feel safe. Dr. Mehta entered moments later, 2 security officers in tow. Mrs. Carter, could you please step outside with us? We have a few questions. Adeline froze, eyes darting from the doctor to me. What's going on? Daisy stirred awake, rubbing her eyes. Mommy, Adeline's smile faltered. It's okay, baby. Mommy's just going to talk to the doctors. When she left the room, I realized my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even hold Daisy's. And when I finally glanced at the smoothie bag she'd left on the counter, I saw the label, our daughter's name scrawled in marker, and underneath it, a small note in her handwriting. Extra vitamins today. She needs her strength. My heart went cold. I knew, deep down, Daniel hadn't lied. The police told me not to go home yet. We'll need to collect samples, the detective said, voice tight with the kind of calm that hides panic. But that night, sitting in the hospital chair beside Daisy, I couldn't stay still. Every creak of the floor made me think of Adeline's footsteps. Every smell reminded me of her perfume, vanilla and antiseptic. Around midnight, after they moved Daisy to the pediatric ICU for observation, I drove home anyway. The house looked the same, the porch light on, the curtains half drawn, her favorite mug on the porch rail. But walking through the door felt like stepping into someone else's life. Her sneakers were by the door. The sink was full of measuring cups and a blender coated with pink residue, the same one she used for the healing smoothies. I grabbed a pair of gloves from the garage, the kind I used for painting, and started collecting everything I could find. Cereal boxes, vitamin bottles, half-empty Gatorades from the fridge. Every treatment, she'd insisted was essential. In the pantry, I found something worse. A locked tin lunchbox tucked behind the rice cooker. I pried it open with a screwdriver and found rows of tiny pill bottles, most without labels. Some were marked with initials, dates, and dosages. One read D, 1, 5 milligrams/WK. Another, maintenance, keeps symptoms visible. I nearly threw up. There was a small notebook beneath them. I opened it and saw neat, slanted handwriting. Adeline's. The first line, January 4th, Daisy bruising again. Good, looks authentic. Keep dose same. Mustn't overdo. Each page was a log. Entries about symptom balance, photo days, and fund withdrawals. She'd written like a clinician. Detached. Methodical. My hands shook so badly the pages fluttered. The sound of tires crunching outside made me freeze. Headlights swept across the wall. My first thought was police, but then I saw the man stepping out of the car. Daniel. He looked older than his pictures, hair thinning, eyes hollow. He saw me through the window and raised his hands like someone who didn't want trouble. I just came to talk, he said when I opened the door a crack. I heard they detained her. They're questioning her, I said. My voice sounded foreign. You said you buried your son because of her. How did you find out? He stepped into the light, jaw tight. After Eli died, I demanded a full autopsy. My ex-wife blamed me for pushing chemo too hard. But the report showed toxins. Same ones your daughter has. The police started investigating, but Adeline disappeared. New name, new job. I only found her again when your GoFundMe popped up in my feed. GoFundMe. I remembered her saying she hated asking for money, but people want to help. It had raised nearly $60,000. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the kitchen counter, where the blender still Saturday. You need to record her, he said. Catch her in the act. The cops will need proof she's the one administering it. I already found her notes, I said, holding up the notebook. He shook his head. That's not enough. She'll claim it's research. She'll say you did it. The thought hit me like a slap. What? She did it to me, he said quietly. Said I was unstable. Said I wanted sympathy online after Eli died. They believed her at first. A floorboard creaked upstairs. My pulse jumped. Wait, I whispered. Did you hear that? Daniel froze. We both looked toward the stairs. Then a shadow moved, slow, deliberate. Adeline stepped into view, phone in hand. Her eyes were calm, almost serene. You shouldn't be here, she said, voice low and even. Either of you. How long have you been here? I asked. Long enough. She glanced at the notebook in my hand. You went through my things. I wanted to scream, but my voice broke instead. You poisoned her. You were killing Daisy. Her expression didn't change. You don't understand. It was supposed to be temporary. Just enough to raise awareness. People care more when there's tragedy. She's 4, I shouted. Adeline took a slow step down the stairs. You're acting like I wanted to hurt her. I was helping her. Helping us. Daniel moved in front of me. You helped my son die. Adeline's calm cracked. He was weak. His mother didn't follow instructions. I thought Daniel was going to lunge, but he just clenched his fists. You're going to pay for this. Adeline tilted her head, a small, strange smile forming. Not before I fix what you've ruined. Then she bolted toward the back door. I ran after her, but by the time I got outside, she was already in her car, taillights glowing red as she sped off into the night. The sound of sirens in the distance grew louder. Daniel exhaled shakily. She won't stop, he said. Not until someone makes her. And for the first time in my life, I believed him completely. The police searched the house until dawn. They took everything. The pills, the blender, the smoothies, even Daisy's toothbrush. Adeline's wellness cabinet was photographed from every angle. One officer muttered something about meticulous labeling. Another just shook his head and said, "You'd be surprised how often this happens." That sentence stayed with me. How often this happens. They told me they'd issue a warrant for Adeline's arrest once toxicology confirmed what we already suspected. But by morning, she was gone, her phone off, her car abandoned in a strip mall parking lot 5 towns over. The passenger seat was full of shredded papers and empty prescription bottles. Daniel was right. She'd done this before, and she knew how to cover her tracks. That night, after the police left, the silence in the house was unbearable. Every inch of it still smelled like her. Vanilla lotion, chamomile tea, lavender detergent. I sat in the kitchen where she used to hum lullabies while washing bottles, trying to understand how the same hands could crush pills meant for her child. Daisy was still in the hospital. The doctors said her toxin levels were dropping, but her immune system was fragile. She's lucky, Dr. Mehta told me, eyes full of exhaustion. Any longer, and her organs might have failed. Lucky. I spent that night scrubbing every surface like I could wash away what she'd done. Then I remembered Daniel's warning, "You'll need proof." So I bought cameras. Tiny ones, motion-triggered, Wi-Fi connected. I installed them in the kitchen, the pantry, even Daisy's playroom. The detective advised against it. If she returns, call us immediately. But something inside me needed to see it, not just believe secondhand evidence. 2 nights later, Adeline came back. It was 2:37 a.m. The motion alert pinged on my phone. I opened the live feed, heart pounding. There she was, moving through the kitchen like a ghost who'd never left. Hair tied back, sweatshirt hood up. Calm. Precise. She opened the cabinet, took out Daisy's cereal, and then something small and white from her pocket. She crushed it between 2 spoons, tilted the powder into the bowl, then poured milk over it like nothing was wrong. I couldn't breathe. Watching it was like watching my own heartbeat stop. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the same pink smoothie bottle. She swirled it, unscrewed the cap, and took a small sip, testing, like a scientist with a lab sample. Then refilled it with milk and put it back in the fridge. She was careful. Too careful. I hit record. My hands were shaking so violently that I nearly dropped the phone. The next morning, I decided to set a trap. I told the hospital I needed to run errands and left Daisy's room early. I parked down the street from the house and watched the live feed. At 8:04 a.m., Adeline came home. She looked calm, humming as she made breakfast. She poured cereal, added the powder, then turned toward the stairs, toward Daisy's empty bedroom. That was my cue. I sprinted up the driveway, burst through the front door, and shouted, "Stop!" She froze. The spoon fell from her hand, clattering across the floor. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "You were going to feed that to her," I said. "I saw you." Her eyes flicked toward the phone in my hand, toward the live feed still recording. "You're spying on me?" "Spying? I'm saving our daughter." Her calm cracked. A scream ripped through her throat, raw and desperate. "You don't understand. She needs me. I was making her better." I knocked the bowl from her hand. Milk splattered the counter, cereal scattering like shrapnel. She lunged at me, nails catching my arm. "You're ruining everything." We struggled. She was stronger than I remembered, all fury and adrenaline. I shoved her back, and she hit the cabinet with a dull thud. Then the door burst open. "Get away from him." "Daniel." He was holding a gun. "Daniel, put it down." I yelled, but his eyes were wild, hollow. "She doesn't deserve to breathe," he said, voice trembling. Eli didn't get to. Adeline stared at him, blood on her lip. "You followed me." He took a step closer. "I've been waiting for this." I threw my hands up. "Daniel, please, Daisy needs me. Don't do this here." For a second, I thought he'd pull the trigger. But then sirens screamed outside, blue lights washing across the walls. Police stormed in, shouting, Drop the weapon. Daniel lowered the gun, sobbing, as two officers tackled him to the ground. Another grabbed Adeline, cuffing her as she screamed, "He's lying. They're both lying." I just stood there, hands shaking, heart hammering, milk pooling around my shoes. When they let her out, she looked over her shoulder at me and said softly, "You'll regret this. She'll never forgive you." Then she smiled, as they pushed her into the police car. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel fear. I felt rage. Adeline's arrest made headlines within hours. Former pediatric nurse accused of poisoning her own child. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Strangers sent messages of pity and anger in equal measure. I ignored them all. My world had shrunk to Daisy's hospital room. Pastel walls, beeping monitors, the smell of antiseptic and apple juice. When detectives questioned me, I handed them the footage. One watched in silence, jaw tight. "That's enough to charge her with attempted murder," he said finally. The toxicology results confirmed everything. Months of exposure, careful dosing, and records that matched her notebook. There was no doubt left. Still, when I saw her in court for the first time, in an orange jumpsuit, she looked ordinary. Calm, like the woman who used to hum lullabies while folding Daisy's clothes. Daniel testified first, voice breaking as he described his son's final days. Then Dr. Mehta explained how the toxins mimic cancer and how Adeline manipulated medical staff. When it was my turn, I looked her in the eye and said, "You took everything good in our lives and turned it into a weapon." She didn't cry, didn't even blink. The jury needed just 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 35 years. No parole. No contact with Daisy. As they led her away, she turned once and whispered, almost tenderly, "You'll see." She needed me. The words haunted me long after the courtroom doors closed. The day after the verdict, I signed the papers making me Daisy's sole guardian. The ink barely dried before the weight of it hit me. Everything was on me now. Feeding her, comforting her, rebuilding what Adeline had broken. We moved out of the old house. I couldn't bear to stay where poison still clung to the walls. The realtors called it a cozy family home. I called it a crime scene. I packed Daisy's toys, her favorite books, and the stuffed rabbit she'd had since birth. Everything else I left behind. The first few weeks were strange. Daisy's hair began to grow back, soft and downy like when she was a baby. She laughed more, but sometimes she'd stop mid-giggle, frown, and ask, "When's mommy coming home?" I never knew how to answer. Therapy helped, slowly. Her psychologist, Dr. Lambert, said Daisy was resilient but needed time to understand that mommy's sickness wasn't her fault. I repeated that sentence every night at bedtime like a prayer. Sometimes, I catch myself scrolling through old photos of Adeline holding Daisy, the fake smiles, the filtered hospital posts. I'd feel sick knowing I once believed every word. Then one night, I found a letter in a box of Daisy's old drawings. It wasn't in my handwriting. "If anything happens to me, tell Daisy I did this for us. People only care when you're hurting." There was no signature, but I didn't need one. It was Adeline's. I burned it in the sink. Watching the ash swirl down the drain felt like exhaling after years underwater. But peace never came easy. Sometimes, when Daisy coughed or looked pale, I'd still panic. I'd rush her to the doctor, terrified the past was somehow seeping back in. The doctors called it hypervigilance. I called it love scarred by fear. 6 months passed before I stopped checking the locks twice each night. Even then, sleep came in fragments. Sometimes I dreamed of Adeline standing by Daisy's bed, humming the lullaby she used to sing, her hands folded neatly like a nurse waiting for the next dose. I'd wake drenched in sweat, listening for footsteps that weren't there. Daisy was healing faster than I was. Her cheeks filled out again, and her hair, the light brown curls she got from her mom, grew thick enough to braid. The doctors said her toxin levels were normal, but they'd keep monitoring for long-term damage. She started kindergarten that fall, clutching a glittery backpack and smiling at me from the doorway like she wasn't scared at all. I was. Dr. Lambert told me that trauma leaves echoes, even in kids who seem fine. Daisy drew pictures of our new home in crayon, but there was always one figure missing, her mother. When I asked why, she said softly, "Mommy's in the bad place. If I draw her, she'll find us." I almost cried. Then, in late October, I got a letter from the correctional facility. No return name, but I knew the handwriting immediately, looping, perfect, unhurried. My first instinct was to rip it up, but curiosity won. I hope you're taking good care of her. Tell Daisy I dream about her every night. One day, she'll understand that what I did was love. No apology, no regret, just that twisted claim of devotion. I took the letter to the backyard, lit a match, and watched it curl into ash. But as the paper blackened, I realized she wasn't gone. Not really. She lived in Daisy's fears, in my guilt, in every cautious breath we took. And that night, when Daisy woke from a nightmare whispering, "Daddy, she's watching us," I didn't tell her she was wrong, because part of me believed it, too. Winter came early that year, sharp and gray, the kind that made every sound echo in the small house. Daisy was doing better. Her laughter filled the rooms again, and she started saying she wanted to be a real doctor, not a pretend one, so she could fix people without hurting them. I told her she already had a healer's heart, but inside me, something was still cracked. I jumped whenever the phone rang. Every time an unknown number popped up, I half expected to hear Adeline's voice on the other end, sweet and calm, asking how her girls were doing. Then, one snowy morning, I got a call from the prison. The voice on the line was formal, a correctional officer. "Mr. Carter, we wanted to inform you that your wife attempted suicide last night." For a moment, I didn't feel anything. Then, strangely, I felt relief, followed by guilt for feeling it. "She survived," the officer continued. "She's under psychiatric evaluation. She asked that we tell you she doesn't want to see you or your daughter again." When I hung up, Daisy was sitting at the kitchen table, drawing with her crayons. She looked up and said, "Daddy, why do you look sad?" I smiled, or tried to. "Just tired, bug." She nodded and kept coloring. A few minutes later, she held up her picture. It was a family of two, holding hands under a bright yellow sun. "No mommy?" I asked gently. Daisy shook her head. "She's in the clouds now. The nice kind." That night, after Daisy fell asleep, I went into her room to check the window locks, just like always. But this time, I caught my reflection in the glass, hollow eyes, streaks of gray in my hair. It hit me how much I'd aged since this all began. How trauma doesn't end with justice. It just changes shape. I whispered into the dark, "We're safe now, right?" The silence didn't answer, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like it was lying. Spring crept in slow and quiet, the way healing does. Daisy was 6 now, bold, curious, unfiltered. She could ride her bike without training wheels and had started telling people she wanted to be a truth doctor. When I asked what that meant, she said, "Someone who helps people see what's real." I couldn't argue with that. We went to therapy together twice a month. Dr. Lambert said Daisy's progress was remarkable, but warned that memories can resurface unpredictably. Sometimes, during story time, Daisy would ask questions that gutted me. Did Mommy love me when she made me sick? Was I bad, Daddy? Is that why she did it? I never had the perfect answers. I just told her the truth, that her mother was sick in her mind, not in her heart, but that sickness can still hurt people. She'd nod, thoughtful, like she was deciding whether to believe me. At night, I'd find myself staring at her while she slept, tracing the rise and fall of her breathing. I'd remember how fragile she once looked in that hospital bed, how I nearly lost her not to disease, but to love twisted beyond recognition. One day, Dr. Mehta called. She'd been promoted and was transferring to another hospital. "Your daughter's story changed how I see medicine," she said. "Sometimes, saving a life means seeing what others refuse to look at." That night, Daisy and I baked cupcakes, her idea. Pink frosting, too much sugar, and laughter echoing through the kitchen that once held only fear. After she went to bed, I stood by the window, watching the moonlight spill across the counter. The same spot where I once caught Adeline on camera. I expected to feel anger. Instead, I felt tired. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about letting her off the hook. Maybe it was about unchaining myself from what she'd done. I whispered, "You don't own us anymore." And for the first time, it felt true. A year passed before life started to feel ordinary again, though ordinary had a new meaning now. Daisy finished kindergarten with a smile full of missing teeth and a certificate that said "most brave." She taped it to the fridge herself, right above the spot where Adeline's smoothie blender used to sit. We'd moved again, smaller house, near the coast. The air smelled of salt and pine instead of bleach and hospitals. Every morning, Daisy would run outside barefoot to watch the sunrise, her hair catching the light like spun gold. Sometimes, I still woke before her, half expecting the old panic, the cold dread, the what-ifs, the echo of Adeline's voice. But it came less often now, and when it did, I knew how to breathe through it. Healing wasn't forgetting. It was learning to live beside the scars. Daisy's therapist said she was thriving. Her drawings no longer had shadows hiding in corners. She started writing, "Mommy is sick, but I'm okay now," on the backs of her pictures. The first time she showed me one, I cried. We planted a tree in the backyard that spring, a small cherry blossom. "For new beginnings," Daisy said, patting the soil with her little hands. When it bloomed, she looked up at me and whispered, "She can't hurt us here, right?" I knelt beside her. "No, Bug. She can't." That night, we sat on the porch watching the petals drift in the breeze. Daisy leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "I think Mommy's sorry now." Maybe she was. Maybe not. But I realized it didn't matter. What mattered was the warmth of my daughter beside me, alive, safe, laughing again. As the stars came out, I whispered, "We made it." And for the first time since that awful day in the hospital, I believed it.